In life, there are moments when everything seems to flow effortlessly, when opportunities seem endless and success seems inevitable. It is as if the universe or some divine force is smiling upon you and every endeavor is blessed. But just as quickly as these moments of abundance appear, they can also fade. This ebb and flow of prosperity is something we all experience in different ways. But there is a deeper meaning behind these cycles. There are times when it feels as if God has cut off the supply that once flowed freely, when what seemed like an unending river of blessing begins to dry up and the struggles seem endless. We are forced to face a new reality. What do we do when this happens? What does it mean when God seems to have withdrawn his favor, or at least the tangible signs of it? To understand this, we must first acknowledge a truth that is often uncomfortable but necessary. The flow of blessings, opportunities, and resources is never guaranteed. It is not a birthright, nor is it something that can be demanded. The flow is conditional. It is influenced by many factors, some visible and others invisible, some within our control and others beyond it. While it's easy to believe that the good times will last forever, we are reminded by life itself that everything in existence is cyclical. Prosperity, joy, abundance, and peace can give way to scarcity, trial, and challenge. And when we find ourselves in the desert, wondering why the river has dried up, it is essential to consider what we can learn from this shift. The first thing to realize is that when God cuts off the supply, it is not necessarily a punishment. We often view a decrease in blessings or a sudden change in circumstances as some form of divine retribution. We wonder if we have done something wrong, if we have failed in some way. While it is true that God's correction can sometimes come in the form of a removed blessing, more often than not, it is an invitation to growth, an opportunity to reevaluate our priorities, our behaviors, and our relationship with the divine. We are reminded that life is not just about receiving blessings. It is also about growing through the challenges, learning humility, and cultivating patience. In these moments of scarcity, we can be sharpened, molded, and transformed into something greater than we were before. It is important to understand that God's ways are not always aligned with our ways. We may not immediately see the purpose behind the apparent loss or deprivation we face, but the Bible teaches us that God works all things together for good for those who love him. This means that even in our most difficult moments, there is potential for growth, healing, and transformation. The desert is not the end of the journey. It is simply a place of preparation. And while we may feel isolated or abandoned when things aren't going our way, we must trust that God has not left us, even when his visible presence seems distant. When God cuts off the supply, it's an opportunity for us to look inward, to search our hearts, and to evaluate our faithfulness. Have we become too comfortable? Have we become too reliant on the blessings rather than the source of the blessings? Have we allowed our pursuit of material wealth, success, or comfort to overshadow our spiritual lives? Often we don't realize how much we have placed our trust in the supply itself rather than in the one who supplies it. In times of abundance, we may have neglected our relationship with God, assuming that his blessings will continue indefinitely. But when that supply is cut off, it forces us to return to the heart of the matter. We are reminded that the source of our blessings is not the abundance itself, but God alone. This brings us to another critical point, the lesson of faith. Faith is not about trusting God only when everything is going well. It is about trusting him even when the supply is cut off, even when the road is difficult, and even when the future seems uncertain. It is easy to praise God when the blessings are overflowing, but true faith is demonstrated in the lean seasons. When we find ourselves in times of scarcity, we are being called to exercise a deeper level of trust. We are called to rely not on the visible signs of God's favor, but on the invisible, unshakable truth that he is with us, that he is our provider, and that his plan for our lives is greater than any temporary setback or challenge. There's also a message in the cutting off of the supply that speaks to our need for resilience. We are not meant to be dependent on constant external support. God has given us the capacity to endure, to adapt, and to grow in times of adversity. When the supply is cut off, we are invited to dig deeper, to rely on our inner strength, and to find creative ways to navigate through the wilderness. The strength to endure is already inside us. Sometimes we just need the right circumstances to bring it to the surface. These seasons are not a sign of weakness. They are an opportunity to discover the hidden reserves of faith, wisdom, and perseverance that we might not have known we had. Furthermore, when the supply is cut off, it forces us to develop a deeper sense of gratitude. It is easy to take blessings for granted when they come in abundance, but when they are removed, we begin to appreciate the very things we once considered insignificant. The relationships we had, the small comforts, the daily provisions. These things are no longer to be taken for granted. We learn to be thankful not just for the abundance, but also for the lessons learned in times of scarcity. Gratitude becomes the key to unlocking the next phase of our journey. It shifts our focus from what is lacking to what is still present, allowing us to cultivate contentment even when our circumstances are not ideal. In addition to resilience and gratitude, there is another important lesson when God cuts off the supply: the power of perspective. How we choose to view the situation makes all the difference. If we view the withdrawal of the supply as a curse, as evidence of God's displeasure, we may become bitter, resentful, or hopeless. But if we view it as an opportunity for growth, a test of our faith, and a chance to deepen our relationship with God, we can emerge stronger and more equipped for the challenges ahead. God's timing is often different from our own, and the cutting off of the supply may be a part of His greater plan. These moments serve as reminders to develop patience, adopt a positive perspective, and trust that delays or challenges are part of preparing us for something greater ahead. Adversity, while often painful and difficult, is one of the most powerful forces that can lead to growth. We live in a world that frequently seeks comfort, and many of us strive to avoid hardship. But the reality is that growth rarely comes from times of ease. It is often in the most challenging moments of life, when we are faced with hardship, that our true potential is unlocked. Growth through adversity is not just about surviving. It is about learning, evolving, and transforming into something stronger than before. When we face difficult situations, we often feel like we are being tested, as if we are standing on the edge of a precipice, wondering whether we will survive the fall or find a way to rise above it. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by adversity, and the natural instinct may be to question why we are experiencing such trials. It can seem as though life is unfair, or that we are being singled out for suffering. But what if, instead of viewing adversity as something to fear or avoid, we saw it as an opportunity to become the best version of ourselves? One of the key lessons we can learn from adversity is the ability to develop resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from difficulties, to not just endure challenges, but to emerge stronger and wiser because of them. It's about learning how to face setbacks, failures, and losses without letting them define us. In fact, the more resilient we become, the more we start to see obstacles not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones toward greater achievement. The challenges we face are often not permanent. They may be temporary tests of our character or our perseverance. When we overcome them, we discover strengths within ourselves that we never knew existed. However, resilience is not something that happens overnight. It is something that is cultivated over time, and it is usually shaped by repeated encounters with hardship. Each time we face adversity, we are given the chance to practice resilience. It's like building muscle. The more we work through our struggles, the stronger we become. If we shield ourselves from all pain and difficulty, we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow stronger. Adversity in this sense is like a crucible, a container used to purify metals. It subjects us to intense heat, but in the end, we emerge refined and stronger than before. In addition to resiliency, adversity teaches us about perseverance. It's one thing to bounce back from a setback, but it's another thing entirely to keep going, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us. Perseverance is the ability to keep moving forward in the face of difficulty, to maintain our efforts even when progress seems slow or when the road ahead appears long and uncertain. It's in these moments of perseverance that we often see the simple act of not giving up, even when we don't know how we will succeed, strengthens our character and builds our determination. When we are in the midst of a trial, it is easy to become discouraged. We may feel like the situation will never change, that there is no way out, and that all our efforts are in vain. But this is where the true power of perseverance lies. It's about continuing to show up, continuing to put in the work, even when we don't see immediate results. It's the person who keeps writing, even when their book isn't selling, or the athlete who keeps training, even when the victories seem few and far between. It is the quiet persistence that eventually leads to success, often in ways we never expected. Moreover, adversity helps us develop a deeper sense of gratitude. When everything is going well, it's easy to take things for granted. We might overlook the blessings we have or become complacent in our circumstances. But when faced with hardship, we are often forced to reevaluate what truly matters. We begin to appreciate the little things, the relationships, the opportunities, the simple joys of life that we once overlooked. When we experience loss or struggle, we come to realize that there are many things in our lives that are worth fighting for. Gratitude often emerges as a byproduct of adversity, as we learn to be thankful for what we have, even when it seems like everything else is falling apart. In life, we often become focused on the blessings we receive, whether it's material wealth, good health, relationship success, or opportunities. These blessings, which we view as signs of God's favor, can easily become the center of our attention. We may become so wrapped up in the blessings themselves that we forget to appreciate the source from which they flow. The blessings we experience are merely a reflection of something far greater, the divine presence, love, and provision that continually sustains us. The shift from focusing solely on the blessing to recognizing the source is a transformative experience that deepens our faith, aligns us with divine purpose, and ultimately brings us closer to the heart of God. It is natural for human beings to become attached to the tangible blessings that surround us. After all, they bring comfort, security, and happiness. Our society is built around the pursuit of success and the accumulation of material wealth, and we are often taught to value these external markers of achievement. These blessings in themselves are not inherently bad or wrong. They are gifts. However, when our focus becomes solely on them, we risk losing sight of the deeper truth that the blessings are not the ultimate goal. Rather, they are the byproducts of a relationship with the source, God Himself. The problem arises when we begin to idolize the blessings, treating them as the ultimate purpose of our lives. When this happens, our happiness, security, and identity become tied to what we have rather than to who we are in relation to the source. We may even begin to take credit for these blessings, believing that our hard work, intelligence, or efforts alone have earned them. It's easy to become prideful and forget that these blessings are gifts from a loving Creator who provides for us according to His will and timing. Shifting our focus from the blessing to the source calls us to a deeper understanding of gratitude. Gratitude, when rooted in awareness of the source, becomes more than just a fleeting feeling of thankfulness for what we have. It transforms into a lifestyle of acknowledging God's continuous presence and provision in our lives. Instead of simply thanking God for the material blessings, we begin to thank Him for who He is and for the relationship we have with Him. We recognize that all good things come from God, and our true joy lies not in the possessions we accumulate, but in the love and grace that sustain us. This shift in focus requires a change in perspective. The material blessings we receive are not meant to be the ultimate focus of our lives, but rather an opportunity to reflect the love and goodness of the source. When we focus on the source, we begin to see the world differently. We recognize that everything we have is a gift, a blessing that should be used in service to others and in fulfillment of a higher purpose. Our purpose is not to accumulate more blessings for ourselves, but to honor the source by living lives of gratitude, service, and humility. One of the challenges in shifting our focus from the blessing to the source is that blessings can sometimes be fleeting. We may experience seasons of abundance followed by times of drought. When the blessings dry up or become scarce, we may feel lost or abandoned, as if the source is withdrawn from us. In these moments, it is crucial to remember that the source is unchanging. Our circumstances may fluctuate, but God's love, provision, and presence, our relationship with the source does not depend on the abundance of blessings we receive. This is a critical lesson. If our focus remains solely on the blessing, our faith may waver when those blessings are no longer visible or tangible. But if our focus is on the source, we understand that God is with us in every season, whether we are experiencing abundance or scarcity. In fact, God often allows seasons of scarcity to remind us to return to the source. When we become too focused on the blessings, we may begin to rely on them more than on God. We may lose sight of the fact that He is the true provider of all things. The blessings can become distractions that lead us away from a deeper, more intimate relationship with the source. During difficult times, when the blessings seem to be absent, we are called to refocus and remember that God's presence is not dependent on our circumstances. We may be stripped of material comforts, but we are never without His love and provision. Shifting our focus also involves moving away from a transactional view of our relationship with God. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that God blesses us because we are good or because we deserve it. While God's blessings often come in response to our faithfulness, the reality is that His love and provision are not earned. They are given freely. When we view our relationship with God as a transaction, where we do good things to receive blessings, we begin to treat Him like a vending machine, expecting something in return for our efforts. This mindset diminishes the depth of the relationship that God desires with us. He does not want us to treat Him as a means to an end, but as the ultimate source of life, love, and purpose. The shift from focusing on the blessing to focusing on the source also brings us closer to understanding God's true character. The blessings we receive are a reflection of His goodness, mercy, and grace. However, they do not define who God is. His character transcends the blessings He provides. God is loving, faithful, just, and sovereign, and His character remains constant regardless of the circumstances we face. When we focus on the source, we come to know God not just as the giver of blessings, but as the creator and sustainer of all life. Our understanding of God deepens, and we realize that He is worthy of our worship and devotion, not because of what He gives us, but because of who He is. In addition to deepening our relationship with God, shifting our focus also changes how we view others. When we recognize that the source of all blessings is God, we are reminded that every person, every circumstance, and every relationship is part of His divine plan. We begin to see others not as competitors or sources of our own blessings, but as fellow creations of God, each with their own unique relationship to the source. This perspective fosters empathy, compassion, and generosity as we understand that the blessings we receive are not meant to be hoarded, but shared with others. Our focus on the source leads us to live lives that reflect God's love and grace to those around us. This shift also affects how we deal with trials and suffering. When we are focused on the blessings, it's easy to become discouraged when those blessings are removed or when we encounter hardship. But when we focus on the source, we understand that God's presence remains with us, even in times of difficulty. Our relationship with the source is not based on the presence of blessings, but on God's unchanging love for us. We may not always understand why we go through difficult seasons, but we trust that God is working in and through those circumstances for our good. Our faith in the source sustains us through the trials, reminding us that the blessings may come and go, but God's love remains constant. In practical terms, shifting our focus from the blessing to the source involves cultivating a deeper awareness of God's presence in our daily lives. It means recognizing that God is not just present when things are going well, but is with us in every moment. It involves practicing gratitude, not just for the material blessings we receive, but for the relationship we have with God and the opportunities He gives us to grow. It requires humility, acknowledging that all we have is a gift from God and that our true joy comes not from what we possess, but from our connection to the source. As we shift our focus from the blessing to the source, we align ourselves with a deeper understanding of life, purpose, and faith. We begin to live not for the blessings themselves, but for the glory of the source. This shift transforms our perspective, enriches our relationship with God, and enables us to live lives of purpose, gratitude, and service. Patience and perspective are two of the most valuable qualities we can cultivate in our lives, especially when facing difficulties, challenges, and uncertainties. Both of these qualities help us navigate the complexities of life with a sense of calm, purpose, and wisdom. While patience allows us to endure and wait for things to unfold in their proper time, perspective enables us to understand and interpret the events of our lives in a way that brings clarity and peace. Together, patience and perspective create a powerful foundation for spiritual growth, emotional stability, and a deeper connection to the world around us. Patience is often misunderstood as a passive or resigned attitude. It's easy to think of patience as simply waiting for things to change, like sitting in a waiting room and doing nothing until our name is called. But true patience is not passive. It's active and purposeful. It requires us to remain steadfast, calm, and hopeful, even when our circumstances are difficult or uncertain. Patience is the ability to maintain a positive attitude and to keep moving forward, even when it feels like we're stuck or when the answers we seek are not yet available. It's about trusting that things will unfold in their own time, even when we can't see the bigger picture. One of the most challenging aspects of patience is learning to wait without frustration or anxiety. In a world that values instant gratification where everything is just a click away, waiting can feel unnatural and uncomfortable. We are conditioned to expect quick results and immediate satisfaction. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the things we desire or the answers we need take time to manifest. Whether it's a personal goal, a dream, or a prayer, patience teaches us to trust the process, to believe that everything is happening according to a greater plan. This is where perspective comes in. Perspective allows us to look at situations from a broader, more understanding viewpoint. When we are in the midst of a difficult time or waiting for something to change, it's easy to become fixated on the present moment and feel as though things will never improve. Our emotions may cloud our judgment and we may begin to lose hope. But when we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, we often see that our current struggles are temporary and that they serve a larger purpose. Perspective allows us to understand that waiting is not wasted time. When we are patient, we are often being prepared for something greater, something more meaningful. Just as a seed needs time to grow into a plant or a sculptor needs time to shape a masterpiece, our own lives require time to develop fully. The trials we face, the setbacks we experience, and the moments of waiting all contribute to our growth. Perspective helps us recognize that these challenges are not roadblocks, but stepping stones on our journey. Patience and perspective also help us to deal with the uncertainties of life. There are times when we find ourselves in situations where we don't know what the future holds. We may not understand why certain things are happening or why we are facing specific challenges. It's easy to feel lost, confused, or even defeated. But when we approach life with both patience and perspective, we realize that uncertainty is simply a part of the human experience. No one has all the answers, and no one can predict what will happen next. What matters is how we respond to uncertainty. Patience allows us to wait without fear or frustration, trusting that the answers will come in due time. Perspective allows us to see that uncertainty is not a sign of failure or weakness, but a reminder that we are not in control of everything. There is a higher purpose at work, and sometimes we are meant to trust the process even when we don't understand it. The most important thing is to remain grounded in the present moment, to focus on what we can control, and to trust that things will unfold as they are meant to. One of the key elements of patience is learning to accept that not everything happens according to our timeline. It's natural to want things to happen quickly, especially when we are passionate about something or when we are facing a challenging situation. However, life rarely follows our schedule. This is where perspective is essential. When we can shift our focus away from our own expectations and align ourselves with the timing of life, we begin to experience peace and contentment. We stop trying to force things to happen and instead learn to flow with the rhythm of life. The relationship between patience and perspective is reciprocal. As we develop one, we naturally strengthen the other. When we practice patience, we begin to cultivate a more expansive perspective, one that sees beyond immediate circumstances and recognizes the larger picture. On the other hand, when we shift our perspective to see things in a broader context, we find that we are able to be more patient, understanding that our struggles and challenges are just one part of a larger story. In relationships, patience and perspective are especially important. Relationships, whether with family, friends, or romantic partners, require understanding and compassion. Sometimes we may feel frustrated by the actions or behaviors of others, especially when we are not in alignment or when we are facing challenges together. In these moments, patience helps us to wait for understanding without rushing to judgment. It allows us to be present for others without expecting immediate change. Perspective allows us to see things from the other person's point of view, understanding that their struggles, just like ours, are part of their own journey. Ultimately, patience and perspective help us to trust in the process of life. We come to understand that everything happens in its own time, and that each season, whether joyful or challenging, contributes to our overall growth. Life is not a race, but a journey that unfolds gradually with many twists and turns along the way. Patience teaches us to trust that everything will come together as it should, while perspective helps us to see the bigger picture, understanding that everything has its place.